And having said that, let's get right into it with the big news of the day. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg died today at age 87, which, of course, she was quite famous for being the second woman appointed to the Supreme Court, as well as the first Jewish woman on the Supreme Court, and was also long hated by conservatives for being a rather outspoken liberal in all of her decisions. This has really been the big fear of the left ever since Justice Kavanaugh was nominated by Trump. Everyone was speculating that if she could just hold on to the election, they would elect a Democrat and then she would safely be replaced by a Democrat. Maybe that will even be the case, because it seems quite doubtful that there will be any attempt to smash through a nomination so close to the election. So, hey, in some sense, you got to say really good job to Justice Ginsburg on sticking in there such a long time. Eh, Brandon?
Yeah, she was really hanging on there for quite some time, and I thought that she was going to make it until after the election. We actually haven't, well, at least I haven't heard much about her health recently. It was, let's say, about a year ago where I think the news about her health was common to see, in CNN or other news sources. And then I think I guess ever since COVID hit, maybe since like February, I'd say, I haven't really heard much about her. And then suddenly you hear the news that she has passed. And it's a very interesting time, because it actually brings us to a very similar situation that Obama had, where he was nominating, was it Neil Gorsuch? And there was an election looming. Now, of course, Obama already had served his 8 years, so he wasn't going to be reelected. But Republicans were saying that we should wait until after the election, obviously hoping that a Republican would be nominated president, and then Republicans would get to make the nomination. So Republicans blocked Neil Gorsuch, and we kind of have this similar situation, although Trump is, of course, fighting for a re-election. Democrats are now hoping that Biden wins the election, and then if they can delay the election of a new a nomination of a new Supreme Court justice, then they can get their guy in. So we kind of have a similar situation in a way, and I was wondering what you think about it. Would the Republicans be hypocrites if they did not kind of follow the same line as they did with Gorsuch and Obama? Or do you think that this situation is just entirely different this time?
I think you could make the argument that after what we've seen with the way President Trump was treated, where you basically have what you could consider kind of a soft coup happening with all of the Russia collusion allegations, and then Ukraine Gate, and just a never-ending amount of attempts to impeach or hinder the presidency, you could really argue that a lot of these fair play rules that once existed are completely off the table. At least that's what I would think. When you're at this point in politically with where we are in the U.S., it kind of just, you only succeed in making yourself look like a jerk and a naive imbecile if you continue playing by the rules when your opponent really doesn't want to. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn because, of course, I would say that the way things are now and sort of win at all costs, that's not a type of system that I would like for the country. But the fact of the matter is that it has come to that, and yeah, I'm just torn. I do think that it would make Republicans look like hypocrites, but in this day and age, that doesn't seem to matter. I am pretty confident that Trump is going to actually win re-election, so I don't really think it's that big of a deal if the nomination was made after the election anyways. So yeah, I'm really torn, and I really don't want to say, right now what I would prefer to happen, because I think positives for both things. I think if for whatever reason Trump said, okay, yeah, we will wait till after the reelection, it would be, very honorable of him to do that. But at the same time, if he said, well, no, it's my right to do it, Democrats can try to block it with, votes and going through the process in the legislative branch. And if they can accomplish that, then they can do it. So I'm kind of fine with both things happening, really, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I honestly think it is so close to the election that it would be really unpopular, and yeah, let's not do it. I mean, but if it was 2 months, 3 months earlier, then I think we'd have a real debate on our hands. Well, interestingly enough, just recently, on September 17th, they published an article actually dealing with speculations about who the next Supreme Court justice nomination would be. It came from Revolver News, and it involves some inside sources within the White House counsel's office. The article reads, one source close to the counsel's office has told Revolver that various open borders agents have been promoting federal Judge James C. Ho for the Supreme Court shortlist. What is disturbing about this development is that Judge Ho has an extensive public record as an activist on behalf of birthright citizenship, the current practice whereby any child born on American soil is automatically considered a U.S. citizen, even if both parents are here illegally. The article continues. Here is a representative passage from Judge Ho's defense of birthright citizenship in Anchor Baby Policy titled Defining America. These proposals raise serious constitutional questions, however. Birthright citizenship is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. That birthright is protected no less for children of undocumented persons than for descendants of Mayflower passengers. That is, in my opinion, an extremely controversial position. And the article does go on to say that, of course, the interpretation of the Constitution proposed by Judge Ho is by no means a consensus position. Common sense might even cause us to doubt that the framers of the 14th Amendment had in mind a principle that could be used to justify the outrageous abuse of American sovereignty that is our present birthright citizenship policy. A scholar from the Claremont Institute by the name of John Eastman said the following on the topic. In a nation such as the United States, which is rooted in the idea that governments are formed based on the consent of the governed, the notion that foreign nationals can unilaterally confer citizenship on their children as a result of a legal entry to the United States, and therefore entirely without our consent, is a bit bizarre. It rewards lawlessness, undermining the rule of law. It deprives Congress of its constitutional authority to determine naturalization power. The actual language of the 14th Amendment actually contains two requirements for automatic citizenship, not just one. All persons born or naturalized in the United States, that's the birth on the U.S. soil part, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States of the state wherein they reside. That's the second requirement, subject to the jurisdiction. That is the source of much confusion today, because to our modern ear, that just means subject to our laws. That is one meaning, of course, but not the only one, and not the one that the drafters of the 14th Amendment had in mind. For them, being merely subject to our laws meant that one was subject to our partial or territorial jurisdiction. It was a jurisdiction applicable to temporary sojourners, what we today call temporary visitors. It was not the kind of jurisdiction that was codified into the 14th Amendment. For that, a more complete allegiance-owing jurisdiction was required. Unquote. Back to the article itself, Revolver's source at the White House counsel's office further revealed that while the White House counsel Cipollone, this is a person's name, was originally committed to carrying out President Trump's intentions to repeal birthright citizenship, he now thinks that such a move would be too risky, and that even Attorney General Barr, who's generally quite good on many things, has expressed squeamishness regarding following through on the president's birthright citizenship policy. Finally, our sources have revealed that Judge Ho, together with outside operatives from the neoconservative quote-unquote think tank First Liberty, have been aggressively promoting opposition research on rival Supreme Court contenders. Their efforts have resulted in keeping alternatives such as Judge Andy Oldham, whose views align more closely with the president on birthright citizenship, off of the Supreme Court shortlist. Their reasoning was that Andy Oldham was somehow a closeted racist, unquote. So now, going back away from the article, I just have to say that I thought what could have been truly the most revolutionary aspect of President Trump's presidency could have actually been overturning this automatic birthright citizenship to illegals. When he announced this, it was kind of like many people on the not mainstream but the dissident right were all very excited that maybe this was a sign that President Trump really is our guy, willing to stand up for us. But in reality, that all got slowed down, and now we see that there's still people in the White House kind of gunning to try to make this a reality, and that they may be wanting to do it through the Supreme Court. And in anticipation of this, you have neoconservatives who are pro-birthright citizenship, like Judge Ho, planning in advance to smack this down. So what do you make of all of this, Brandon?
Well, at first I was a bit confused because it says here that it said one source close to the counsel's office have told Revolver that various open border agents have been promoting federal Judge James C. Ho for Supreme Court shortlist. These are people in the White House counsel's office. So I was a bit confused at what that exactly means. There's open border. There's people in the White House counsel office who support open borders. That was confusing to me. Why would those people be counseling the president?
Right.
Do you have any idea?
What I think it is that you have kind of the fiscal super conservatives who tend to be much more in line with libertarian sort of thought. And they have these really super romantic ideas about how liberty can work absolutely everywhere. And it's sort of this fringe position you do get among libertarians that open borders is basically justifiable. Now, I'm sure these guys wouldn't go so far as to say that there should be no measures whatsoever trying to prevent illegal aliens from getting here. But I think they are interested in honoring these really radical pure constitutionalist principles, where they think it's the pure constitutionalist position to have this rote birthright citizenship. And I also think that there are some somewhat nefarious agents at play who know that they would lose millions of dollars if they crack down on illegal immigration, because their companies depend so much on these basically illegal dealings with illegal immigrants. And they are interested in having as cheap labor as possible in the U.S. So they will spend, millions and millions of dollars themselves financing politicians and judges and think tanks to undermine immigration reform. At least that's, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're probably referring to maybe like I think the Koch brothers were famously pro-open border. The big conservative donors.
Exactly.
One of them died recently. But yeah, they took kind of a libertarian stance on borders, and they thought that open borders were good for business. Businesses could utilize the cheap labor. And I guess you're right that there probably would be a lot of corporations that have deep interests and are trying to manipulate or change opinion in the White House to support or to keep the birthright citizenship clause. But another thing I had a question about with this article was that we don't know anything else, at least from this article, about this federal judge, James C. Ho. I'm not ready to write the guy off just for this one stance, right? Like, obviously, he's a judge that has various opinions on a whole range of different issues, and I would like to know what those were as well. Maybe issues on abortion. Maybe there'd be issues on abortion that I would like. Maybe there'd be other issues. I tend to like someone who is a strict constitutionalist. But so maybe if I saw some of his other opinions, I could put this behind me and hold my nose and approve his nomination. I mean, what do you think? This obviously isn't just the only issue that we have to think about when we're going to nominate a Supreme Court justice.
I hate to be kind of a one-issue guy when it comes to the Supreme Court. I really am not, but this to me is such a pivotal issue because I believe that the U.S. is experiencing really rapid demographic change, which is disenfranchising literally through because of the way the Electoral College works. It's really going to be disenfranchising tens of millions of people, if not hundreds of millions of people, because we're talking about potentially a major Republican stronghold like Texas going blue before 2030 or something due to the amounts of illegal immigration coming in. We've already seen Virginia basically go fully blue. And we're also looking, some of the other states that are shifting that we may never get back would also be Florida, and I've also heard Ohio, because of not just legal immigration, but illegal immigration and their children. So I think it's one of those situations for me that if we don't act within the next few years, we're just never going to act and never really. We're just going to see the Republican Party become the Democrats' light. It'll just be the Democrats 10 years ago party. You're already seeing that a little bit. So in my opinion, it would kind of sink everything, even if he was pro-life and supported a lot of the other things, I think, because ultimately, if demographic shift continues and the Republican Party continues to become much more liberal and just trying to court the Black and Hispanic vote, which we've seen President Trump do a lot of, eventually that will be all that the Republicans are, and what will be the point for voting if you really are a classic American conservative. At least that's what I think about it.
So you see it as kind of a linchpin issue that, if this domino falls, then it's sort of just over for traditional conservatives. But yeah, my next question, I guess you kind of answered. So even if he was, for the overturning of Roe v. Wade, you would still, say that no, we can't have somebody who is a birthright citizen activist on the Supreme Court.
That's right.
Okay.
And I got to say, the only way it could ever really work out is if somehow the Hispanic vote in second generation Hispanic Americans were, instead of being just 35% Republican, I mean, what if they were more like 40% to Republican and maybe this wild group of, 10 to 15% Libertarian or something? I mean, that would be certainly a really interesting direction for America. But that's not how it's going to be. So this really is a linchpin issue. You said it best.